Hi friends, Grace here. Welcome to this video where I want to talk about self-sufficiency, gardening, and a lot of the craziness that's happening in our world today. Now, today I'm outside. We're recording outside because it's a beautiful day. The sun is out and it just looks spectacular, which is why we are here. It's quite hot, so we'll try and keep this video short, but I do want to touch on a few important points. Now, I was just speaking to my mum this morning. This is what sparked me to get this camera out and record this, because I've been planning to do this for a while. But she was just telling me how expensive things are now in London. She was talking about a drought as well, because it's been very hot there lately, like 40 degrees, 35 degrees, which is quite rare. I don't think it ever got that high when I was living there. So now they're talking about droughts. Everything is now expensive. Gas, electricity, inflation, all of that stuff is going on, you know. And a lot of people have been telling me that about what's going on in England and all over the world, how expensive things are. And many people are worried, especially with these food shortages, you know. And this is not what God designed. You know, the reason why we are in this situation, the West especially, is because we have become so dependent on the government and on the system. And that was never God's plan. I mean, you just go back to the Garden of Eden, Genesis. What did God tell Adam and Eve to do? Was it to build large cities? Whew, I thought that was a mosquito. But did God tell them to build large cities and stuff? No, he put them in the garden and told them to tend to the garden. A simple life, you know. But sadly, throughout the centuries, we've lost that knowledge. Many of us don't really know how to grow our own food. We are completely dependent on the system. I don't think we realize how dangerous that is. I mean, as soon as I started studying the message, learning about country living, the desire of my heart for years was to get out and be self-sufficient. You know, you must be crazy to not see what's going on. I mean, recently there's been so many food processing plants burning to the ground, strangely enough.
So industrial accidents happen, of course, but this is a lot of industrial accidents at food processing facilities at the same time the president's warning us about food shortages. They're getting hit by planes and catching fire. What is going on here exactly? Jason Rance hosts a radio show in Seattle and joins us to put it into perspective.
Accidents happen, but when you've got well over a dozen food processing plants and warehouses getting destroyed or seriously damaged over just the last few weeks, at a time when the food supply is already vulnerable, it's obviously suspicious, and it could lead to serious food shortages. That's why some folks are now wondering, well, number one, what's going on? And you've got some people speculating that this might be an intentional way to disrupt the food supply. We're talking about some really significant plants. The Taylor Farms facility in Salinas, California was completely destroyed by a fire last week. We've had two major potato processing plants in Belfast, Maine and Warden, Washington that were completely gutted, which is happening at a time where we already have a potato shortage globally. You were talking about the onion supply at that Rio Fresh, but it's not just produce plants. Last month there was a fire that took out a Nestle food plant out in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and that's impacting frozen food brands like Hot Pockets or Stouffer's, which maybe you might buy if you can't get fresh food from a warehouse that just exploded. And that Shearer's food facility you just mentioned in the open, I mean, that's the only West Coast facility that they operate. So there is some significant concern, of course, that this is going to impact the supply chain. Now, to be clear, the timing is very suspicious. It's obviously concerning. Police are saying that these fires are due to faulty issues with equipment, so they're not saying that this was intentional. Either way, it's obviously going to have some significant, implications in us getting our food.
Very strange. We've heard about thousands of cattle in Kansas, that just died, which they say is climate change. But I think it's quite suspicious. I don't believe what they're telling us. They are now building cricket facilities. Crickets are like a dirty bug. And they're trying to encourage people now to eat crickets. And they're saying it will be in kids' school meals and so on. And crickets are just nasty. And you know what? If you are dependent on the system and they cut off your food supply, you would eat that, unclean foods. I mean, just remember back in the times of Jerusalem, they were eating their own children. So when you're hungry, when you're destitute of the Spirit of God, you will do anything, So this is why, especially with what's going on, we need God more than ever. And it's important now to start making the necessary plans to be self-sufficient. And you can start anywhere. You don't have to have a big house or a garden. We have these things that just bite you. So you just got to be careful. But and I wanted to mention this idea of food shortages is not real. It's certainly not real in God's model. For example, beginning of spring, I believe, I just planted one seed, a zucchini plant. Now we've got like tons of zucchini bigs that are growing, and within each zucchini you're getting tons of seeds. So you plant a seed, it multiplies into an abundance, you know. So this whole idea of food shortages and stuff like that, it's not real. When you get your garden, plant your seed and start growing, trusting in the Lord, it will multiply. But they want to create fear and panic in man. You know, these food shortages and blah, blah, blah. We have to feed you crickets and all sorts, and everyone's panicking. Whereas in Christ, when you're in his model, when you see these things, you don't panic because you know it's just a lie from the devil. And you can start growing your food now. You don't have to have a big garden. You can start now. I have a friend. She lived in an apartment, second floor. She has a little balcony. She's got lots of big pots. She's growing her potatoes. She's growing her salads, all sorts of things, herbs and so on. She's doing the best that she can in her situation. And God will bless her. I have another friend, a couple. They have a nice house, not so much of a big garden, but they're utilizing every space. They're getting pots and areas and stuff like that, and they're growing their own food. So you can start now. There's so many tutorials on YouTube that will tell you about canning, growing your food in buckets. That's what I did. I tried that out. I got some potatoes and some lauk and some peppers growing just in buckets. So you can start now, you know, and God will bless you. And if it's your desire, I'm of the mindset that whatever you want to achieve, whatever you desire, God will give it to you. If it's in his will, I mean, he will give it to you. That's his promise, you know. But the problem with us today is that we don't trust God, or we're living in sin, or we're harboring hate or anger, or all sorts of foolishness in our hearts. And that's why we don't get no success in our spiritual walk. But it's so important to give it to the Lord, to trust him, and he will make it happen. I mean, many of you know my testimony. I've shared it quite a few times, I believe, here on this channel. But just to cut a long story short, when I was in England a few years ago, many of you know that I was trying so hard to buy my property, trying so hard, and every time it kept failing. I kind of gave up 4 properties I liked that I really wanted to buy. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to leave it in God's hand. I just kind of stopped looking. And then I just saw this opportunity in Switzerland, job opportunity. So I thought I'll come to Switzerland for 6 months or a year, no plans of staying any longer, because I never wanted to live in a country where English was not the main language. But nevertheless, I just came here, you know, for this job. And that whole 6 months has turned into 3.5 years. I still can't believe it today, you know. And I know that's God's will, because he knew what was going to come with this COVID thing, you know. And he knew it would have been a great tragedy for me and a great stress for me if I'd bought something there. Because what, I was going to get a mortgage, right? I would have been trapped. And we see what's going on with the economy. Inflation is going up and stuff like that. That would have been so stressful to have that debt, you know, on my head and trying to work, and with all these COVID laws going on. But he saw what's going to happen. He made the opportunity for me to come here. And when I came to Switzerland, again, I was living in an apartment, again, because I thought I wouldn't find somewhere in the country because it's so expensive and it's so difficult. But it made it happen for me, you know. So now I'm extremely happy, love where I am, you know, it's like perfect for me. It's like it was made for me. That is God's doing, you know, and we need to have these experiences in our lives, you know, of trusting him, talking to him, seeing how he's worked in our lives. We need to build that trust now. Now he's given me more than he gave me what I desired. I always wanted to like have my garden, grow my own food, be self-sufficient. I think this year, my second year gardening, I've been eating off my land, my produce. It's been amazing. Like kohlrabi is a plant here. I don't know what it's in English, or if they grow it in England, I don't know. But it's like a vegetable, potato, tons of randon. I don't know what to do with it. Like behind me, I might juice it, or I need to can it or something like that. We've got pumpkins as well that are going, tons of apples and stuff like that. It's just been incredible. So everything that people have been struggling with, like with this whole COVID, it never impacted me. Actually, COVID was a blessing for me. Why? Because I could just work from home. I only work 3 days a week. Perfect. Work from home. No stress, And when you're out of the busy towns, you don't feel it so much. Here where I am, I don't really care about all of this mask and stuff like that. I mean, all the requirements are sort of gone here in Switzerland. But during that time, it did not impact me at all. I actually benefited from this whole thing, So God has his people in his hands. He will protect them. And that experience has just made me love him and trust him more and know that he has my back. And it's the same thing for you. But you've got to desire it we are co-laborers with God. You don't just sit there and think, oh, God is going to make it happen. I see that with a lot of Adventists. Oh, God will provide. Oh, Grace will just run to your house, like, if things get worse, and silly things like that. That's a foolish virgin. You're going to find yourself in a crazy situation because the collapse will happen, guaranteed, whether it be this year, next 5 years, who knows? But it's coming. And you want to be prepared. For me, I want to be prepared. I want to do all that I can to be prepared, So this is the time, friends. Start to take this seriously. Being self-sufficient, being independent, being free from the system is a blessing. I've always wanted to grow my own food. Like, I'm doing that now. I can pretty much live off what I've been growing, this year in the summer, It's been an amazing experience. It's so rewarding being self-sufficient, like having your own food supply, having your own water. Another thing I love about Switzerland is that there's water everywhere, and water is important, for survival. And the water's quite clean here. Even like we have our own water supply, but also there's a waterfall, just like a 10-minute walk. Under 10-minute walk is hidden. It's amazing. I wish I could take some of you here on the trip, like just for a week or two. You would love it, man, because it's amazing. It's really amazing. And so that's there. It's just lovely, And I'm so grateful. And that little experience has just made me love and trust God, because he knows the beginning for the end. He knows what's best for us. And as long as you walk with him, you trust him, no matter what your situation is, he will make it happen. Pray and leave it to him, and he will do it. That's his promise. We have to take him at his word. Read those promises in the Bible and believe them. Faith is so important. The third angel's message, depending on the word of God. But many of us don't have that. We don't have a living experience, a living testimony of what God's done in our lives. It's so important, So the purpose of this video is basically just to encourage you all. Start making preparations now. Many will find themselves as foolish virgins. Why? Because they never made the necessary preparation. Spiritually, like mentally, physically, like, are you exercising? Are you working out? Are you getting your mind right? Growing your own food, knowing what herbs you can eat and what you can't eat, because there's poisonous herbs here and sometimes they look alike. So all of these things we've lost. We really need to start learning them. I just think it's so important, And but I just find the people of God just make excuses. They don't take it seriously. It shocks me. They think, all of a sudden, when the time of trouble comes, they're just going to find themselves okay. No. If you're not preparing now, you'll be those foolish virgins, sadly, probably eating your own children. It's a serious thing when we are told the time of trouble, such as never before, is on the horizon. You should see what they're doing with the Great Reset, how they want to reset the whole system. They want control of the mind. So they're going to use the food supply, your water, your comfort, everything, you know. Sometimes I think those who are in the third world countries are in a better position than us, because a lot of them, they're independent. Like, they know hardship. We don't know hardship. Many of us in the West, we don't know real hardship, but it's coming. And we need to prepare, you know. I was talking to my dad. I come from a Nigerian background. And he's building his house in Nigeria, and he's like, come, you know, he's got like land, and you know, in Nigeria, everything grows, like mangoes and all that stuff, fruit trees and stuff like that. And in my mind, you know, I think about it, okay, but the reason why I don't, because I'm just not used to that culture, and there's so much stories about voodoo, they're into a lot of that weird stuff. I mean, if God calls me, I would go, but when I look at those, they don't know what they have there, like in those tropical countries. It's a blessing. Here you're being tracked everywhere with your phone. They want to bring in all these digital ideas. Things are just going to turn so nasty, and it's going to happen just like that. So if you're not preparing, if you're not building yourself in the Lord, you will find yourself on the wrong side. So I'm just doing this video just to encourage you all to get ready, start preparing. I mean, just go on YouTube and look up growing your own food in buckets. So many testimonies. There's so much information now readily available for you to make that transition. It's so important, you know. And as I mentioned, I'm here, I'm pretty much could live off the produce. We've had like so much zucchinis, a cucumber, tomatoes, all sorts of things, you know. It's a blessing, you know. And this is what God desires us to experience, you know. It's not about having some big house in the city and stuff like that and thinking you're someone. Like, it's just having your own little plot of land, whether it's under an acre, that's yours, that you can live off, and being free and independent in Christ. You know, not fearing any man or the state. I mean, it's just so, so important, you know. So take what you will from this video. I hope it was useful to a lot of you, and God willing, you'll see or hear from me in the next video. Take care and God bless. So I'm looking at my options. I just like to plan and prepare, like, what if this happens, or what if we have no electricity? Like, do I have my tent ready? Do I have my like portable stove ready? I just want to be ready and prepared, you know, because I don't want to be one of those people, foolish virgins, running to being a burden on someone else and saying, oh, help me, like, you know, all of that nonsense, you know, or being trapped somewhere I don't want to be, you know. So it's just so important. I can't emphasize this enough. Start preparing now. Pray, start now. It's so, so important.